Hello everyone, welcome to the Departamento Loratorum. My name is Max, and today I'd like to talk to you about the Celestial Lions. Over the course of the Imperium's history, many Space Marine chapters have been brought to the edge of extinction or destroyed outright. Most of these cases, while unfortunate, are simply the result of Astartes facing off against an overwhelming foe, being caught unprepared, or simply having bad luck. But, sometimes, far more sinister forces are at work. Accusations of heresy, real or imagined, can be a death sentence for even the mightiest of Space Marine chapters. Traitors hiding within other Imperial organizations can also make it their mission to wipe out otherwise loyal Astartes brotherhoods, depriving humanity of their most stalwart defenders. And, in some cases, chapters have fallen victim to the most insidious forces of all, human pride and arrogance. This is the tale of the Celestial Lions, a heroic chapter brought to the edge of ruin by their own noble pride and the unmatched arrogance of the Emperor's own Inquisition. The story of the Celestial Lions begins 4,000 years ago. They were created as part of an unknown founding, their gene seed drawn from that of the Emperor's Praetorian, Dorn himself, and they inherited much of his nobility, stubbornness, and pride. At some point after their creation, the chapter was tasked with defending an area of space known as Elara's Veil, a vast subsector of the Ultima Segmentum based around the nebula of the same name. The region would prove difficult to pacify, both due to its sheer size and the number of foes held within. The Lions based themselves on the planet of Elysium 9, a world of warm jungles and savannas. It is home to tribes of proud hunters and storytellers, who appear to be similar to the ancient Terran civilizations that inhabited sub-Saharan Africa, if the names used by the brothers of the chapter and their darker skin tones are any indication. The traditions and practices of these tribes have had a profound influence on the culture of the Celestial Lions. Tales and sagas are considered to be especially important, with chapter history and engagements often relayed via communal storytelling. Visitors are required to share an account of their own first, a tradition going back to how the tribespeople of Elysium welcome newcomers around their campfires. Even when the Celestial Lions host the Feast of Blades, an honor duel fought between the many successor chapters of the 7th Legion, storytelling plays a major role. The Lions' Feast require that each champion must share the story of his fight with 10 others before the competition can be declared completed, in addition to disallowing the use of any metal weaponry, according to lore introduced in the first founding background book. The chapter appears to utilize the standard Codex Astartes ranking system, albeit with different naming conventions. Sergeants are known as Pride Leaders, with captains being called War Leaders. Specialist ranks also receive unique monikers, with chaplains, apothecaries, and librarians being referred to as Death Speakers, Lifebinders, and Spirit Walkers, respectively. Like most sons of Dorn, the Lions are known to be stubbornly devoted to their oaths and duties, fighting on against even the most impossible odds, as we shall see. For many centuries, the Celestial Lions guarded Elara's Veil, defeating humanity's enemies and fortifying Elysium to serve as their regional headquarters, surrounding it with orbital arrays and star fortresses. Despite their best efforts, however, the Veil proved to be too much for one chapter to guard alone. The Lions fought bravely, but many worlds suffered and burned. The chapter made a petition to Terra, requesting for reinforcements to be sent to help pacify the Veil. The High Lords looked at the blighted region and, surprisingly, decided to act. They decreed that 2 chapters would be sent to help pacify the Veil, to be raised as part of the 25th, or Bastion founding, in the latter half of M40. These chapters, the Star Scorpions and Emperor Spears, joined forces with the Celestial Lions, swearing sacred oaths of loyalty to one another. Together they formed the Adeptus Vaelarii, or Sentinels of the Veil, an order bound by pact and honor to defend the worlds of Elara's Veil. And, for many centuries, this pact was upheld. Together the Sentinels scoured the region, keeping it free of foes, and over time the 3 chapters grew close. They were bound not by shared bloodlines, but by their sworn oaths, mutual respect, and fraternal love. The Celestial Lions, as the oldest of the chapters, took on a more senior role in the partnership, acting much like an older brother to their younger comrades. The myriad threats facing the Veil stretched the Sentinels thin, but together they managed to hold their own. This period of relative stability did not last, however. The Star Scorpions began to fall victim to genetic instability, their gene seed degrading and dooming them to a slow, sad end. But before this could come to pass, the whole chapter was lost on crusade, robbing their brothers of their still great strength. Centuries later, in roughly the middle of the 41st millennia, a new chapter was founded, bearing the number and colors of the lost Star Scorpions, but taking on a new name, the Mentor Legion. Emissaries from the Emperor's Spears opposed their creation, viewing it as dishonorable to their fallen brothers, but their protests fell on deaf ears. To this day, the surviving members of the Sentinels of the Veil are known to regard the Mentors with disdain. More immediately, though, the loss of the Star Scorpions put the Celestial Lions, and their brothers, the Emperor's Spears, on the back foot once again. Their position in the Veil had become much less secure, and their mission to defend it significantly harder. But an even greater trial for the chapter was yet to come. A decade prior to the Third War for Armageddon, the Celestial Lions were called to help put down a rebellion on the ecclesiarchal world of Khattar. The Khattarn Insurrection, as it came to be known, began when the priests of the world were seduced by the whispers of the chaos god Slaanesh and fell to deviancy. These twisted holy men and women began preaching their dark creed, and the population of the planet, weary of their prayers to the god emperor long going unanswered, listened. Soon Khattar was in full revolt, and such was the force of its blasphemy that its PDF units and nearby Imperial Guard regiments rose up with its leaders and priests. An Inquisitor, Apollyon, attempted to quash this heresy, but his actions met with only failure. With the rebellion still growing strong, Apollyon set up a naval blockade around the planet and called upon the Celestial Lions for aid. The chapter sent 5 companies to put down the Khattarn Insurrection, led by a captain named Saul. They quickly set to work, raining holy fire down upon the planet and slaughtering every man and woman who had taken up arms against the Imperium. Within a few weeks, the rebels were defeated, their armies wiped out to the last man. Satisfied that their work was complete, the Lions left the world and returned to their ships. Any lingering heresy among the population would be dealt with by preachers, as was the common practice after most cleansing actions. In the few days it took the Astartes to recover their material and honor their dead, inquisitorial acolytes went among the population, assessing them for signs of further heresy or deviancy. As the Celestial Lions' fleet left orbit, Inquisitor Apollyon gave an order to the ships of the Imperial blockade. They began to fire on the defenseless world below, incinerating 8 billion souls and ignoring the Lions' demands for them to cease. Apollyon responded to the chapter, saying that he had determined that the population was beyond salvation, and thanking the Astartes for their, quote, worthy efforts, though they were in vain. The Khattarn Insurrection was ended in the fires of Exterminatus. No one knows exactly why Apollyon chose to condemn Khattar to destruction. It was within his rights as an Inquisitor to be sure, but it does appear that he made the decision shockingly quickly. The Celestial Lions believe that he was hiding some dark secret, although others have noted that it is completely possible that he was correct in his assessment, or that he was just one of the many hasty, careless fools that make up the Emperor's Holy Inquisition. Whatever the truth, the Celestial Lions were furious. Many Space Marine chapters would react violently, attacking the Inquisitor responsible and dealing with any consequences later. But the Lions, in their nobility, and some would say naivete, wished to resolve this issue the right way. It would prove to be their downfall. The chapter sent a delegation of Death Speakers and war leaders to Terra, determined to share their tale. Their ship never arrived. It was found 2 weeks later, wrecked deep within Orc-held space. All signs pointed to an error during warp travel, but this sure was convenient for the Inquisition, wasn't it? The Lions continued to spread the word, contacting local Imperial governors and administrators, demanding an investigation into the Inquisition. But before anything could come of this, the chapter was called to Armageddon. The Orc warlord Ghazghkull Thraka had returned, bringing with him the largest Waaagh ever seen. All 10 companies of the Celestial Lions, 983 warriors, every single member of the chapter save the rawest neophyte, were sent to fight in the Third War for Armageddon. They were deployed to Hive Volcanus, on the western coast of Armageddon Prime. The city had fallen to the Orcs in the previous war, and its lords and commanders made it clear that this would not be allowed to happen again. For 3 months and 16 days, the Lions fought to make this a reality, but the Orcs, despite their brutality, were far from the deadliest foe that the chapter would face. From the moment they arrived on Armageddon, the Celestial Lions began to suffer from an unparalleled string of misfortunes. Intelligence provided to the Astartes was often wrong or highly inaccurate. Wherever the Lions fought, the Orcs struck back with overwhelming numbers. Reinforcements were often delayed, and Celestial Lions units were even sent to aid Imperial Guard forces that had been long destroyed, leaving them cut off and surrounded. The Astartes soon realized that only the intelligence from their own scouts could be trusted, although they were often ambushed and killed by Orcish forces, who appeared to know their every move. Routine patrols, even those deep within Allied territory, were also attacked. In one instance, a wall-mounted defense gun even malfunctioned, blowing 7 Thunderhawks bearing critical supplies out of the sky before it could be brought back under control. Casualties among the Lions were far higher than for any other chapter stationed on the planet, with half of their number lying dead after only a few weeks of fighting. Their fleet in orbit also suffered from heavy losses, with many ships being boarded or destroyed after crucial orders arrived too late, or not at all. By the end of the war, only 3 of their vessels remained. But still the Lions fought on, determined to do their duty, and when they received word of Orcish forces gathering nearby, they knew they had to respond. The Mannheim Gap was a canyon in the mountains north of Hive Volcanus, and it had become a hub of Orcish activity. The Greenskins there were building their scrap titans known as Gargants, preparing to unleash them on the Imperial defenders. A preemptive strike had to be made, to destroy the war machines before they could be activated. And the Celestial Lions were the only force available that could possibly complete such a mission. The chapter agreed with High Command's assessment, sending all 500 of its surviving members to assault the Gap. Orcish void shields kept the region defended from bombardment or a drop-pod assault, so the Astartes were forced to march overland, heading out from their fortified command center and into the ravine. Scouts were sent out, of course, and they reported that the Gargants were still inactive, but the Lions had to move fast. Their officers determined that the best course of action was to strike in full force, destroying the scrap titans in one fell swoop, and then withdrawing before they could be bogged down in a protracted battle. It was a sound plan, but fate, and the Lion's enemies, had other ideas. As the chapter charged into the Orcish camp, the Gargants awoke. They had been kept dormant, waiting for the Astartes to arrive. If this was all the Celestial Lions had to deal with, they might still have won, even if it cost them their lives. But the next surprise spelled the end of their assault. Thousands of greenskins poured out of the canyon walls, smashing into the Astartes' flanks. The orcs had been told that the chapter was coming, for nothing else could explain why whole clans had chosen to bury themselves and lie in wait. The Celestial Lions, realizing that they had been betrayed, waged a fighting retreat, but their misfortune was not over. Brutally accurate sniper fire rained down from the canyon walls, las shots targeted at the chapter's senior officers and apothecaries. Hundreds of Astartes fell, their bodies defiled and their gene seed remaining unharvested. The lions fell back to their fortress, only to find that it had fallen before they even arrived, in an uncannily coordinated attack by the kine, a word for cattle that the bitter lions had taken to using to refer to the orcs. The survivors had to fight just to escape their former fastness, returning to High Volcanus in their battered gunships. The first battle of the Mannheim Gap was a complete slaughter. Only 3 officers above the rank of Pride Leader survived: War Leader Vakembi, Death Speaker Julkara, and Lifebinder Ketuk. They did not last long. The Lifebinder was found dead the first night, shot through the eyes in a land raider, the chapter's last apothecary, and the hope for its future seemingly gone. The other officers did not last much longer, leaving Pride Leader Ikine Dubaku, a veteran sergeant, in command of the 96 remaining Celestial Lions. Refusing to leave Armageddon with their tail between their legs and their duty unfulfilled, Dubaku intended to lead the Lions back into the Mannheim Gap. The Gargants were gone, but the area was still a significant Xenos fortress, and the chapter's pride demanded that they destroy it, or die trying. The Lions had attempted to contact the Flesh Terrors for aid, but the Sons of Sanguinius were just as ravaged as they were. Before his passing, Death Speaker Julkara had also sent a message to his former comrade, Reclusiarch Grimaldus of the Black Templars, informing him of the Celestial Lion's fate, and the actions that the Inquisition, or at least a cabal of certain Inquisitors, had taken against them. Grimaldus, determined to aid his cousin chapter and refusing to let a few arrogant Inquisitors use them to make a point on their order's independence, traveled to High Volcanus to meet with Dubaku. This section contains spoilers for the ending of the novella Blood and Fire, so if you don't want to hear any, skip ahead to the next one. The Reclusiarch wanted to preserve the Celestial Lions and give them a chance to rebuild, allowing them to continue to fight for the Imperium, even if they wished to honorably sacrifice themselves. To that end, he chose to remain on the world even as the Black Templars prepared to leave, leading an Imperial Guard army from Hellsreach to aid the Lions in assaulting the Mannheim Gap. Dubaku accepted their help, although he did demand that he be the one to slay the Orcish warlord who had repelled his chapter's first assault. So began the second Mannheim siege. The Imperials fought their way up the canyon, trudging through a river of blood and ash. The humans suffered heavy losses, with almost all of the Lions save for Ikine Dubaku and thousands of guardsmen falling to the orcs. But in the end, the day was won. The Void Shields were taken down, allowing High Marshal Helbrecht to drop in Black Templar reinforcements. Dubaku also managed to slay the Orcish warlord, avenging his fallen brothers in the process. In the aftermath of the battle, Dubaku was named the new chapter master of the Celestial Lions, and he and his surviving warriors set out to return to Elysium 9 and begin rebuilding their chapter. The Lions were gifted a Black Templar strike cruiser, the Blade of the Seventh Sun, and accompanied by Castellan Zavarin Royst, and a contingent of warriors to aid them in their efforts. It appears that things were finally looking up for the Celestial Lions. However, as the chapter was slowly rebuilding their numbers, another unexpected misfortune struck. The Great Rift opened, splitting the galaxy in two. Elara's Veil, and by extension the Celestial Lions, Emperor's Spears, and Black Templars of the Elysium Crusade, were left stranded on the far side of the rift, in what is known as the Imperium Nihilus. Cut off from the broader Imperium and without aid, they were forced to face the new threats of the era Indomitus alone. Chapter Master Ikine Dubaku, the Kindbane, Lord of Lions, the Claw of Dorn, became the unquestioned warlord of the Adeptus Vaelarii, leading them in their defense of the Veil. Charismatic, noble, and warm, he was loved by both the Astartes and mortals under his command, serving as a talisman both to them and to his recovering chapter. But while the Celestial Lions still fought on, continuing to send out strike forces, their losses meant that the Emperor's Spears had to shoulder much of the burden in the defense of the Veil. They did this gladly, happy to aid their wounded friends and allies. This was no easy feat, however, as even in the best of times the duty had stretched 3 full chapters to their limits. To make matters worse, a chaos army known as the Exarchy, led by a warband of traitor Astartes called the Pure, was invading the Veil, slaying its defenders and seeking to conquer its worlds. The Pure had even almost managed to destroy the Blade of the Seventh Sun in their first appearance, where they attacked the asteroid mining outposts of the Forge Moon Bellona. The Lions and Spears may be isolated from the broader Imperium, but they were not completely forgotten. Data threads were sent to the chapters, detailing how to create new Primaris Marines in their war gear, although no reinforcements were able to be sent through the rift. It is rumored that reinforcements were intended to be sent to Elysium, but that they never even reached the sector, possibly due to inquisitorial interference. The Celestial Lions did not even receive the data thread that was bound for them, and only learned the process for creating new Primaris Marines after the Emperor's spears shared their knowledge with their wounded allies. Despite everything, the Celestial Lions still fight on, defending the Veil from the invading Exilarchy, and slowly recovering their strength. This upcoming section contains spoilers for the end of the novel Spear of the Emperor. Skip ahead to the next one if you don't want to hear any. Approximately a century after the opening of the Great Rift, Elysium was threatened by a massive Chaos fleet. The Pure, who were revealed to be the returned Star Scorpions chapter that had fallen to Chaos, brought in allies from outside the Veil and sought to crush one of the main bastions of Imperial resistance. The Adeptus Vaelarii's only hope of defeating the Chaos forces lay in gathering their whole armada, which would leave vast swaths of territory undefended and likely to fall. Knowing this, Dubaku made a difficult choice. He and his brothers would abandon their home, evacuating what survivors they could to preserve their culture, and petitioning for the spears to allow them to settle in their homeworld of Nematon. The Imperium could not afford to lose its defenders over stubborn pride, as Dubaku had learned on Armageddon. But, while informing the Emperor's spears of his plan aboard their strike cruiser Hex, tragedy struck. Chapter Master Akine Dubaku was slain, decapitated by a Calidus assassin who had hidden disguised as a serf among a Mentor Legion vessel. Lieutenant Commander Amadeus Caius Incarius of the Mentors had been sent into the Veil by his chapter, crossing over through a passage known as the Straits of Alona. Ostensibly, he was there to assess the region and report back on its condition. Unbeknownst to him, his commanders had collaborated with the Inquisition, who wished to slay Dubaku and continue their petty rivalry, even at the cost of an entire subsector. The assassin was eventually tracked down and slain with a vortex grenade by another Mentor serf, Anurada Daz. The surviving Celestial Lions and Emperor's spears, refusing to give the Inquisition the satisfaction of knowing that their plan had worked, set about covering up Dubaku's death. They sent a message back across the Great Rift, stating that the Mentor's vessel was found destroyed before it could reach the Veil, and that evidence of the plot was discovered on board. They warned that any vessel bearing the markings of the Inquisition or Mentor's Legion that crossed the Straits of Epona would be destroyed on sight. The Celestial Lions do continue to fight on, determined to guard the Veil until the last brother falls. But the tides of war have turned against the Adeptus Vaelarii, and the Brotherhood has been almost pushed back to the Ophion system, the home system of the Emperor's spears. It is a dark time for the Celestial Lions, and for the galaxy as a whole. But as their story shows, for as long as they continue to fight on, hope still exists. The Celestial Lions came into existence in 3rd edition, being included in Codex Armageddon and Index Astartes Emperor's Shield as one of the chapters that took part in the conflict, sending all 10 of their companies to the planet. They also received a web article to go along with the conflict, which detailed their involvement in the Khattarn Insurrection, conflict with the Inquisition, and decimation on Armageddon and High Volcanus, and at the First Battle of the Mannheim Gap. I'll put a link to that article below as well. Their next major appearance was in the novella Blood and Fire by Aaron Dembski-Bowden, and in fact he's ended up writing most of the chapter's modern lore. The novella focuses on Reclusiarch Romaldus and his efforts to save the Lions from destruction, giving us some more detail on their actions on Khattar and Armageddon, as well as telling us about the Second Battle of the Mannheim Gap and Dubaku's rise to Chapter Master. It also introduced the chapter's unique cultural elements and ranks, so this is where we learn most about the chapter's character. It's also where the orc snipers meme comes from, so that's pretty neat. A Celestial Lions character, Codicir Kalar Vakul, appeared in the Deathwatch comic book series, also written by Aaron Dembski-Bowden. The series follows a kill team hunting down an Urgul on a planet before being attacked by orcs. We don't really learn much about the chapter in it, but it is cool. The Lion's final appearance, to date, was in the novel Spear of the Emperor and the Index Astartes Emperor's Spear article in White Dwarf 460 that accompanied it, both once again written by the great Mr. Dembski-Bowden. They go into the chapter's status as members of the Sentinels of the Veil and their duties in standing guard over Elara's Veil, as well as giving us updates on their status post-era Indomitus. And hopefully we'll be seeing more from them in the future as well. I really love the Celestial Lions. They have a beautiful color scheme and a unique theme among Space Marine chapters. It's always nice to see Astartes that aren't based on a European culture. Knights and Vikings are cool, but there have been a lot of fun and interesting groups and people across human history, and it's great to see them represented as well. I also like to see Space Marine chapters brought back from the brink of extinction. It's a story type that I just enjoy. And I love when the Imperium's pettiness and cruelty is on full display. I like the Imperium, but only when it's reminding you that it's an awful place to live, run by people who are 50% incompetence, 49% arrogance, and 1% fancy hats. That's what makes it an interesting faction and setting, and making it too noble, reasonable, or even competent kind of ruins it for me. It's also interesting to see the Inquisition work to destroy a chapter through more subtle means, due to the Astartes questioning if it's right that they get to press the Exterminatus button as much as they want with no external oversight. I totally buy that an Inquisitor or cabal of Inquisitors would pursue this grudge even well into the era Indomitus. It's completely counterproductive and insane for sure, but few have ever accused an Inquisitor of being sane and lived to tell the tale. All of this is helped by having Aaron Dembski-Bowden, one of my personal favorite Black Library authors, be the guy writing their lore. His novels are great, I highly recommend them. I can't wait to see what he or other authors will do with the chapter next, and hopefully we'll be seeing the gold and blue of the Celestial Lions for many years to come. Let me know your opinions on the Celestial Lions, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a patron or channel member. You can join awesome members like Wolfrey, Grubus, Error404, Sully, Mr. Danger Zone, Isfly, Lord Spud 117, and Amoro Burns, while also getting access to cool perks like members-only polls and early access to videos. Please also don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out in the YouTube algorithm. For now, thank you and have a great day. Bye!